Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts. Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
Well, good evening. It is a delight to see you, and I'm glad you were able to make it through the tornado. Tonight we honor the spiritual continuity within the legacy of our ancestors. And as I was preparing for this, and I began to look at scriptures and began to think about where I really wanted to go with this, because I want it to be sacred, especially when we get to the ceremony part, but I want it to be maybe enlightening. I like creating ahas. So I hope I create an aha for you tonight. What I discovered when I was looking at scriptures and looking at the metaphysics of the scriptures, I came across a scripture in John that said our ancestors ate of the manna in the wilderness. God gave it to them to eat. And so I decided to look in the revealing word to see what the metaphysics of ancestors was. And I had been thinking about ancestors and God. And of course, I had already been learning even as a child that we were the descendants of great people. We were the descendants of the women in the family. We're all descendants of powerful women. So I came up believing that all of the women on both sides, my father and my mother's side, were powerful women. And that, of course, that meant I was going to be a powerful woman too. And I am. But anyway, and then I began to think about something struck me recently, and I remembered seeing the family tree. How many of you are familiar with family trees? Yeah. And I remember that the earliest of the ancestors that we remembered were at the roots. Is that what you remember? Yeah. And then the rest of us, began to rise from that. But then, we were told we descended from greatness. We descended from power and that kind of thing. Well, I thought about it because I said, it actually looks as if we ascended from our ancestors and we descended from God. Well, wouldn't you know that the revealing word said the same thing? It said that ancestors were what people, or for people who erroneously believed that they descended from human beings. And therefore, they are in bondage to their limitations. Interesting. So what the revealing word is saying to us is that it is okay for us to honor the attributes, the gifts, the accomplishments of those who came before us in our familial lineage. It is okay to take on certain characteristics that we find to be empowering and supportive, to learn from their mistakes and things of that nature, but that the thing that will bring us to the highest realization of our greatness is to align with the reality that we descend from the highest and the greatest power in the universe. And that it is, in truth, those aspects, those attributes, those abilities, and those characteristics that we want to use to move forward in our lives. While embracing what we received from our ancestors, but utilizing the power of God to be successful in those areas of our lives, in those times of our lives where it is far more difficult to grasp with the legacy of our ancestors. Am I making sense? So it was so fascinating, because then I was able to understand something that happened to me when I was in my 20s. And I had been raised to know of these powerful women in my family. You come from powerful women on both sides. It was true. One of my ancestors helped to integrate Charity Hospital in New Orleans. Another helped to create a spiritual women's organization that's filled with thousands of women all over the world now. And there were many, many more accomplishments of these women. But when I moved out into the world, it wasn't enough to know that I came from powerful women. When things began to happen in my life that didn't necessarily embrace my being a powerful woman, and I began to have a realization that, sorry men, but that a lot of men were not looking for powerful women. They weren't looking for somebody to tell them what to do and to be their mother and so forth and so on. And they were looking for companionship or whatever things that they desired in their lives. And so I began to alter who I was so that more people would like me. Well, that didn't work. Because my beloved, what happened was that I had to end up being, for each person I interacted with, what they wanted me to be. And so, because I knew a lot of people, I had to keep a record of who I was supposed to be with whom. And when I became a flight attendant and I was meeting people all over the world, it got really difficult to figure out who I was supposed to be, when, where. And people were getting upset with me. They were getting angry with me. What is wrong with you? You're not acting like yourself. Well, no, I'm acting like you want me to be. And finally, I just said, you know, I can't do this. And maybe I won't be one of those powerful women through the ancestry, through the legacy of my family, but I'm going to have to be sane. Because I was becoming insane trying to figure out who I really was. Because at that point, I didn't know. And I think that's what the revealing word is saying about how we can erroneously believe that we descended from human beings and be in bondage to their limitations. And so what we are being called to is to honor them, to love them, to embrace what they gave us to use as we moved forward from where they were to this next place in this world. And that we might not be able to do it the way they did it because things are no longer the same as it was when they did it. Does that make sense? And so we may have to do it a little differently, but you see, that's where the fact that we descend from the greatest power in the universe supports us, because when we align with the guidance and direction of God and utilize the gifts that we inherited from our ancestors, we cannot possibly make a mistake in our lives, because we will always be walking in the direction of our highest and best. And it took me a while to learn that. And it was such a surprise to find out that the Revealing Word supported me. The Revealing Word, by the way, if you don't know, is one of the books for metaphysical interpretation written by our co-founder, Charles Fillmore. He has the Revealing Word and the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary. So if you ever want to understand the deeper spiritual meaning of things you read in the Bible, you can consult one of those. And so tonight, we want to honor our beloveds who have gone before. We want to hold them in our hearts. We want to emphasize the greatness they taught us and the ability to move forward in spite of the things that hold you back, in spite of the difficulties and the challenges. Because if we go back 3, 4, 5, even more generations, things were not as simple as they are. There wasn't a lot of technology. Not everybody was driving self-moving cars. There was no television. There were many differences, and so their lives were very different. And so they gained certain strengths, and I think it is ours to honor those and build on them. But it is also ours to step away from believing that we must continue the mistakes they made. And so what we are calling for tonight is for all of us to begin to look at what is it that we continue to do, aligning with that from which we descended, and what it is that still serves us when remembering and honoring that from which we ascended. And so tonight I would like us to remember those who went before us, honor their gifts and talents and skills, remove our attachment to their limitations, connect with the power of God continually flowing in and through us, and to allow ourselves to move forward in the direction that will lead us to the kingdom of heaven right here, right now, moment by moment in our lives. I want to invite you, if you will, to say an affirmation with me. I remember those who went before me and I live in the power of God. I remember those who went before me, and I live in the power of God. I remember those who went before me, and I live in the power of God. Again, I remember those who went before me, and I live in the power of God. Once more, I remember those who went before, and I live in the power of God.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.